cheer. Queens of York, the atmosphere, and the crowd that never tame. Mets PostGame Show brings the flame.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to the Mets PostGame Show right here on the channel and on X. And oh my Lord, was that a game that you could have turned off rather quickly, Mets fans? Just an overall bad, terrible performance all around by the New York Mets. But there is one positive. Give it up for Austin Warren for saving the bullpen today. I'm going to give him a nice standing ovation because he's the only one that deserved it today. Austin Warren gave you 4 innings, did what he had to do to save the bullpen because we all know the bullpen's going to get overused with this rotation. The problem, once again, right? Scored 12 runs yesterday. Do you want to count it 4 runs today? Sure, let's go out 4 runs. 4 runs today, right? It's the, oh, wow, the offense looks good. All of a sudden, the offense looks bad. It's been a back and forth the entire season. We're in game 112, and the offense continues to be the problem. The pitching is now continuing to be a problem. So now it's a combination of pitching and offense that continue to shit the bed on a consistent basis other than David Peterson. And we find ourselves in a situation where we're going back and forth in this division with Philadelphia, right? Sometimes they can't get out of their own way either, luckily for us, because if they actually had an ounce of, a streak in them, we would be many games back right now. Let's be honest about that. But the problem persists. It's the same thing over and over and over again, right? The opportunities from the offense are there. You know the whole point, everybody's saying, oh, let's get Quan, guys like that. We don't need on-base guys. We need run producers. Like, this is the biggest problem. And again, even if we would have got a Eugenio Suarez or something like that, right, it really doesn't matter. And my cat's going crazy because he's sick of the Mets too. The thing that is the biggest problem is that it's not like they don't get people on base. We had 8 hits today. I know a couple of them came late in the 9th inning, but we had people on base, right? We had opportunities. There was a couple of walks in the game as well. Like, we had people on base. A couple of guys roll over, double plays, pop-ups. It's just the continued effort of lack of driving those runs in. They get on base consistently. They just can't drive them in for whatever reason it is. If it's pressure, I don't know, right? Other than Soto, a lot of these guys have been here a while, especially the core. It's the same guys that have been doing the same thing for years. So, Soto has just joined the party. Like, he's the outsider that came in and says, hello, here we are. Oh, I can join you guys in being a shit show for 4 out of the 6 months? Yeah, let's do it. But that has been the problem, right? Juan Soto just got here. This has not been something that is just starting now with this team. This has been the same problem for years with the core of this team. And I'm adding Lindor into that because he's been here since 2021. He's been in 2020. He's been here a while. He's been around just as long as most of the core in Pete Alonso and Brandon Nimmo. And you want to throw Jeff McNeil in there? Let's throw him in there too. It's been the same issue with the same guys. They made the bed with these guys, right? They gave Nimmo the contract. They gave Lindor the contract. They're probably, I would be shocked if they, I don't know if they're going to sign Pete Alonso, but I find it very hard to believe with all the pressure they're going to get that Pete Alonso is not going to be a New York Met long term. So you made the bed with the core guys. Soto is going to be affiliated into that core of guys, right? The Fab Four, whatever the hell Cohen wants to call them, right? The fake four. How about that one? All right. The biggest issue is that it's the same problem every year. We don't got impact players on this team. We don't. We have a couple of guys in Brandon Nimmo and Pete Alonso and Francisco Lindor that hardly put a full season together. They have 2 hot months, and then they have terrible in the other months. They might have a little solid month over here or over there. But it's the same problem, the same guys. We ask about these guys every year. Every year. Go back every year to the channel. Every year. It's the same thing we talk about. These guys have, out of the 6 months of the season, they'll have 2 great months, whenever that may be. Some have back-to-back really good months. Some have 1 good month in April and 1 good month in September. But from May to July and May to August, nothing. Like, this is the biggest problem that is persistent with the offense, right? Because it's the same guys. We've been changing guys from 5 through 9 for 4 years now, right? It was Beatty, it was Vientos, it was this guy, it was that guy. Like, when are we going to admit that maybe this core is the problem? Yeah, Dolo, Soto is the ultimate disappointment for sure, but he's going to get the most blame because he makes the most money. Right? He makes the most money. It's his first year here. I'm going to tell you this right now. It's a whole different environment. All right. He was playing for a contract last year. Now you got to earn that contract. Now, don't get me wrong. Right? Lindor hasn't earned his $300 million. Soto is not going to earn his $765 million. They're never going to earn it to the point of like overall stats throughout their Mets career. It's just unfathomable. It's almost impossible. Right? You hope during those stretches of long contracts, you get a World Series. Right? But it's the problem that continues. Like, it's the first year of Juan Soto, right? We're gonna write him off just like we did Francisco Lindor. And then, everybody's singing a Lindor song now, right? It's the same. Like, only last year, people were calling for Lindor to get the hell out in May. Last year. It wasn't like it was 2 years ago. It was last year. He had to remain an exceptional 4 months after May. And everybody shut up about Francisco Lindor, even though he was the same problem he was every season. The same problem. And we act like it doesn't count. It's the same thing. Now, guys like Lindor, guys like Alonso, guys like Soto, those guys show up in the playoffs. Like, look at the playoff numbers. I know Pete Alonso doesn't have a ton of playoff experience, but his numbers are pretty damn good. Juan Soto's are excellent. Lindor's are excellent in the playoffs. So am I going to, try to convince you that just because they're not doing it now, they're not going to do it in the playoffs? I don't know that, right? You can't predict that stuff. But their track record says they will. Even when Juan Soto had a down season when he got traded to the Padres, he had excellent numbers in the playoffs for the Padres. Like, so until we get there, we're not going to know. But it's a huge problem. And, look at the Dodgers, right? Everybody wants to, everybody picks the Dodgers to win the World Series. They have not played well since the beginning of July. Like, they've been just as bad, if not worse, than the Mets. Like, the Brewers are the best team in baseball right now. They overtook the Cubs. The Tigers just got out of their rut. They're on the verge of sweeping Philly. Like, it's crazy what is going on right now in baseball. And that is why nobody can predict that, the Mets can't win a World Series, the Yankees can't win a World Series, the Brewers can't win a World Series, the Phillies can't win the World Series. Every one of the fan bases are saying this team's not good enough to win a World Series. And you guys know, when the Mets play teams, especially teams that are division win leaders or teams that are right now in the playoffs, and even if the Mets are playing them or close to playing them, I like to listen to their sports talk radio. The same shit. Yes, I'm sorry, Dwayne. That's right. But still, you understand what I'm saying. The Dodgers have been up and down, but they finally got a little bit better, but they haven't played great either, right? There was teams that were the best records in baseball. We're only like 2 or 3 games from the best record in baseball. So it's not like anybody's running away. That's the thing. Like, all these teams are bunched up between 2 or 3 games of being the best record in baseball. And in your league, it's around the same thing. So it's the same thing. Like, the fans in every city are talking about the same thing. This team's not good enough, right? Maybe Padre fans are excited about all the guys they got, but they're a franchise that have been known for choking in the playoffs. That they spent the most money at one time in the offseason. They made the biggest trades at the deadline for the last 3 out of the last 4 years. But they ultimately failed in the playoffs. So, they've been overhyped by the media for years, the Padres, and they've underperformed. So, it continues to show you that you get into the playoffs, you got a shot. Regardless of what you think of your team, what's bad, what's good, it doesn't matter. Am I confident going into it? No. But it is what it is at this point. Again, this is what I talked about at the trade deadline. You got to fill your holes in the offseason so you don't have many holes to fill at the deadline. David Stearns left holes on this roster on March 28th, on opening day. And if everything went right, then you would have the holes that I said you would have, and most people said you would have going into the deadline. Well, guess what? It doesn't always happen like that. The holes that you didn't think you had in your lineup came to fruition. Vientos sucks. Alvarez got sent down. Nobody really, you really didn't have a third baseman. Your center fielder is non-existent. So what did you have to do? You had to fight your way to get a center fielder at the last minute of the deadline who isn't an impact bat, but is a better offensive player than what you had at center field. But ultimately, you had to worry about one more thing, because I'm telling you this right now, I truly believe this. If the Mets didn't have an issue with their offense, and by the way, I'm blaming the offense here. I'm blaming the players. But if you didn't have to worry about your lineup, if Vientos would have been doing at least close to what he was doing last year, if Alvarez showed a pulse for most of the year, you wouldn't have to worry about your lineup. If the 4 guys at the top would have been playing a little bit decent, a little average with runners in scoring position, not even bad, average. You don't even got to be great, average with runners in scoring position. You wouldn't have to worry about it bad. Nobody would be talking about center field and who's batting 7th or 8th in center field. But what I felt this whole time is that because the lineup has been so bad, they needed to get somebody in here with a pulse offensively. Now, Mullins is an impact player. He is a above average player and a better offensive player than Tyrone Taylor, so it's an upgrade. But because Stearns had to worry about that, I guarantee you he half-assed trying to get a starter as well. So it impacts everything. That's the thing when I always talk about the trickle-down effect. And it's not about being negative. It's about common sense. When you got to focus on one thing, when you don't have to focus on one area of the team, it makes it a lot easier to focus on the areas of need on your team at the deadline. But we walked into this season with question marks in the starting rotation, right? Even though we thought the bullpen would be fine, some guys haven't performed, and he had injuries. Fine, he had injuries. But even the guys that you had to trust, like Stanek, isn't the same. That's a big blow to the late innings games. And then you have to use Reed Garrett more. Brazaban is in the minors. This is the issue. This is the major issue, that it's a trickle-down effect. You overused your bullpen that probably got Minter hurt and probably got your other lefty hurt and Danny Young, and overused your bullpen other than Diaz, because Diaz never got an opportunity to pitch. You overused your bullpen in April and May, even though your starting pitching was so good. They didn't provide length. So they were good, but let's not act like the bullpen that was good in the first 2 months was overused in those first 2 months, right? So as much as everybody wants to give the credit to the starting pitching when, why we were, 20 games over 500 at that point, a lot to do was the bullpen that was completely overused. That was a solid bullpen until they were overused. And we weren't even pitching long enough into games as starters to warrant anything successful. And everybody, look at the ERA. But they weren't throwing innings that were anywhere close to league average. It wasn't even close. You understand the first 3 or 4 games starts in April. I get it. You're building them up, fine. But, God forbid, spring training, you build them up. So opening day, you don't have to worry about it. But when you got guys like Senga, when you got guys like Holmes, when you didn't have Manaea to start the season, when David Peterson has thrown 170 innings last year coming off of hip surgery, now you got to rely on him more to keep on going deep, which he has, but nobody's helping him out. Like, thank God for Austin Warren. That's why I gave him a nice little clap. Because it's not consistent. It's not sustainable. Like 4 innings, 3 innings, 4 innings again. You had 3 days in a row where you had, 3 out of your last 4 games. You had guys that went 3 innings, 4 innings, and 4 innings. How is that sustainable? Like, this is constant every 5th or 6th day with these guys. And, there's too many people that say, bring up the kids, bring up the kids. Fall for that brainwash shit from David Stearns. It's not going to slide with me. On this channel, it's not going to slide. I'm telling you that right now. Because those kids are on restrictions. Pitch counts and innings. You really think they're going to throw them in this rotation and just let them go? Are you out of your mind? They care more about next year than they actually do about this year. And obvious, because what they did at the deadline. Explosive, he might have been, but it wasn't his hip. You know what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't his hip that blew out. But again, it's the overusage. We were killing these guys in the bullpen. Like, these kids are going, at least one of them, hopefully, because it's still TBD on the Cleveland series. But these kids are going to have restrictions. You got 2 guys, and, Manaea is still trying to build up. Even they talked about it at the end of the broadcast. And Ronnie says, oh, you think they're going to push him? Well, yeah, they're going to have to push Manaea. You had one guy throw 6 innings, six and a third, and David Peterson, and one guy in your last 4 games. Like, that is the problem. This is the continued issue. Like, we can talk about the offense all we want. It's a problem. We understand that. But you can't give up 7 runs and expect the offense to score 8. Like, I just don't understand. Like, all right, we scored 2 late runs. We scored 4 runs. Not bad, but it's league average. You can't give up 12 runs in a game. You can't give up 7 runs as a starter. It's very hard to come back from that. You're constantly behind in these games. So it's just blow up innings. Like, Montas looked good for like the first inning and a half, and then he looked like he forgot how to pitch. It's the same thing. Like, it's just crazy to me. Well, so you know what? I don't want to hear about Soto's bad energy, because Lindor had a lot of bad energy in April and May too, right? There was fans that couldn't stand Francisco Lindor in April and May. And now we all love him. So it's not about the energy. It's about this. It's about him not playing well, and he's probably frustrated. He's pressing, just like Lindor was pressing when he first came to the Mets. Same thing. It's the same thing, but it's a combination of all 4 of those guys having terrible numbers. Now, Pete Alonso was so hot the first 2 months that his runners in scoring position is going to be very hard to come down from what it was. As it looks good still, but he hasn't been good. He's batting just under 200 with runners in scoring position in the last month. Lindor, the same thing. Even though Lindor looks a little bit better the last 2 nights. Like, it's the same problem. Oh, yeah, I agree with you. I think there's a combination of things. But we were talking about the cohesion with the clubhouse last year in April and May. Like, it was just, we were talking exactly that. We were talking, maybe these guys just don't fit together. And then by the time September came, they looked like the best family in the world. Yeah, the dude is, Soto is definitely a me guy. We all know that. We all know that. But that me guy got a World Series. right? He helped that team do it. He got a lifeless Yankee team to the World Series. Him and John Carlos Stanton. One guy can't stay healthy, the other one is the me guy. So, like, yeah, exactly. Winning does that, right? You know, we Met fans are acting like we are, like, including myself, like we're like, 15 games under 500 because it feels like it. It feels like the way they're playing. But the offense has done a smidge of enough to be around first place in the NL East and continue to be one of the top teams in the National League because they're only like 2-game difference in the best record in the National League. Well, MDOT, yeah, you know why he was so happy? Because he knew he was getting paid. That's nothing new with teams, with players. Like, they knew, like, they're human. Like, they understand that. And you can say that Juan was getting grossly underpaid for years having the seasons he was having. So, yeah, explosive. But you know who else are? The Dodgers, the Cubs, the Yankees. You know what I'm saying? Like teams that thought they were out. Look at the Guardians. They're 2 games out of a wild card, and guess who we're facing? They're going to be revving. Look at the Marlins. The Red Sox, the Rays. Like, these teams were playing better. And those are teams that were basically thought they were going to be sellers, most of them. And some of them were. So, like, it's a weird year in baseball. The Dodgers aren't up by 20 games in the division. Like, it's crazy to me how weird this season has been. There is no dominant team in baseball. Now, some could say the Brewers, but that was only about a month ago, where the Brewers were kind of like hovering, where, they were kind of behind the Cubs, but they weren't playing great. All of a sudden, they're playing great. And now they have the best record. Like, it can flip over, it can flip on a dime that quickly. What Patriots didn't it take a year for Lindor? Like, I think Lindor kind of finally started to get a little bit of fan, like, a little bit of fan, like, protection, or a little bit of fan, like, joy, and say, oh wow, when he hit that 3 home runs against the Yankees in the Subway Series at Citi Field, it kind of like they kind of like hovered a little bit, like, oh, okay, this guy showed a pulse, and they started to like hover a little bit into like, oh, I still like this guy a little bit. Showed a little fight, right? That was almost that was a bad year for the Mets, but it showed a little bit of fight from Francisco Lindor. Like, he wasn't gonna take the blows and continue to not the fight and just take this sit down and just take it. He fought back, and I think that was it too. Edwin Diaz in 2019, the guy couldn't stop giving up home runs in big spots, closing situations. Like, so it's like, it's similar things. Guys that just come here, regardless of it, if it's even, see, what people don't understand, it's a very different dynamic going from the Bronx to the Mets and from the Mets to the Bronx. Like, the fan bases, yes, same city, but very different. Very different. Right? Met fans always expect to fail. They always expect everybody coming to be Jason Bay of the big acquisition. They always feel that because they talk about it. When the Yankee fans, they expect to just win, right? You expect that you win the pinstripes, that's it. You're done. You're there. Play great. Like, it's a different mindset. So from the negative undertone from the Mets fans through their history and through fans watching for years, we're quick to throw guys under the bus and saying he's not going to work here. He's for himself. Same thing we said for Diaz. He was a scared little boy in 2019, right? Didn't look like he had a pulse. Like, he was just couldn't get out of his own way. Lindor, the same thing. He's a me guy, right? Doesn't he misses smiles. He's still smiling even though he's bad. When the team is bad, still smiling. And then 2022, the Mets had the best records until they fell apart at the end. And then we know what happened in 23, and then we know what happened last year. Yeah, but Dola, that's not true. No problem letting you go if you're ass. How's that true? Didn't they keep Gary Sanchez for too long? Didn't they keep like many guys, Gleyber Torres for too long, Clint Frazier. We go on and on with guys. They keep their guys there too long and basically live or die with them. But the fact of the matter is, it's a different fan base, different ways that the fans think. Right? Yankee fans are starting to realize that everything is on sunshines and rainbows on the other side. Right? They continue to talk about fire Cashman and blah 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 and everything like that, but they don't realize how bad it can actually be. We've been there. Like, the Yankee fans don't understand what they're going through right now. They have no idea how to handle this. That's why they act like 2-year-olds. Right? Met fans, we have so much scar tissue built up that, not that we always expect it, because most of the time we do, but that's why we overhype seasons like last year, like it wasn't supposed to be a shit show and it ended up being a surprise. That's the problem with Mets fans. We cherish and overhype those surprise years, when years like 2022 wasn't a surprise. It was supposed to be a contending type of year. Now, it wasn't supposed to be like they were supposed to be one of the best records in baseball, but they were supposed to be a playoff type team. When we have expectations, we tend to fail. When we have no expectations, we tend to do good. And everybody gets excited about it, and they overhype the season and realize that we're not as good as we played. And that's the other issue. That last year was cute, but it was an unexpected year. We have too many of those in our history. Right? Just 2015, you go back 10 years ago. Very unexpected. 2022 is kind of like, all right, we made some big moves here. We signed a couple of guys. All right, we should be a good team. Now, nobody expected World Series team, but when we were winning and dominated the division for almost 5 months out of the year, and we fell apart in September, but there was some expectation, but we ultimately faltered during that expectation. And it trickled into 2023. Now, what Met fans were hoping for was that the hype of last year was going to just trickle over until this year. But it's a different dynamic. It's a different situation. There's expectation now. Your unexpected year. Same thing goes for 2016. In 2015, because of the year that they, the surprise that they had and got to the World Series, there was expectation in 2016. And what happened? We got knocked out of the first wild card. Like, that is the issue. Like, we fall for the not great team that had a lot of surprises and a lot of luck involved, which, again, you need luck to win a World Series. Make no mistake about it. But it was a season of transition. Remember, that was the word. The transition type of year to get ready for 2025. And because it was a surprise season, David Stearns wasn't going to do anything in really big to warrant that surprise. It's just say, okay, let's get something in here, a couple of bullpen arms, nothing crazy. Bring in Winker, all right, that's a solid, decent move. And, not getting the ultimate thing that we ended up needing in the postseason, which was another starting pitcher. And it's kind of like almost the same thing, even though they got better bullpen arms. But their main issue, because, again, the offense, I don't care who you would have brought in here offensively. Even if you wanted to bring in Eugenio Suarez for whatever reason, if the top 4 guys ain't going to hit, nobody's going to make the difference. So there was nothing he could have really done with the offense if those guys are not doing well. Yeah, but Rob, overanalyzing what? Who are we replacing? Few starters. Where are we getting our starters from, by the way? Right? That was supposed to be done at the deadline. That was a fail by David Stearns. All right? Don't tell me the prospects. So the prospects are going to come up and be the lightning rod, be the difference of this team with restrictions, inning restrictions and pitch count restrictions. That's what we're counting on. Because guess what? If that doesn't work, guess who you're going back to? The guys that you replaced them with. So the kids go back down and you replace them with the same shit that you had before. Like, I hope everybody understands that. There's nowhere else to go. Like, unless there's completely no restrictions on these kids, and again, no guarantee they pitch well, I can give a shit about AAA numbers. We know AAA isn't very good, by the way. And they've been good in AA too. So that's a nice sign. But we all know minor league numbers mean absolutely nothing. Right? It's easy hanging out breaking ball in AAA where guys are not going to hit it. But in the major leagues, they'll take it 440 feet. Like, we don't watch them every day to see how many guys miss hangers and how many times. And, the strikeouts are nice, but again, they're not very good players in AAA. Like, there's a lot of, retreads in AAA. Now, they had good numbers in AA as well. So that's a start. That's a nice sign because the AA is where usually the best players are. And for some reason, the Mets are afraid to throw guys up from the AA to the majors when most teams do it. They get maybe a few innings or a few starts in AAA and then they're up. The Mets seem to need to get everybody a full season and 80 innings and this many at bats, and then you waste any type of opportunity they could have been good for this team. So it's not overanalyzing; it's common sense. Like, we had a chance to replace pitchers. It was the deadline. Now, I understand not a lot of teams overpaid, but what if the Mets did? What if they overpaid for a pitcher that they desperately needed? Right? What if they did that? And they kind of overpaid, but guess what? You actually got a good starter in here. And I'm not even talking about what if you would have went after Merrill Kelly. And I'm not saying he's a top ace, but he's a damn good pitcher. A lot better than most of our pitchers in our rotation, who gives you innings, who actually pitches well, could make a huge difference because there's no stopper on this team. Not saying Merrill Kelly was a stopper, but there was guys out there. David Stearns didn't want to pay. And again, you could talk about farm system and building up your farm system. You build up the farm system to, yes, bring guys up. But when a lot of your guys are blocked by other guys on your major league roster, and you currently had 4 guys that play the same position, you do what the Padres did to get better. Because a lot of those guys in that farm system that they traded were mostly blocked. And, 1 or 2 might have not been blocked, but they ultimately went and got the guys they needed. Their strength was their bullpen. You know what they did? They made it better. That's the problem with the Mets, and that's the problem with David Stearns. He's not looking to strengthen something that's already good, but he's not even fixing the problem that is ultimately the problem. Like, it was almost impossible to get anything offensively that was going to be worth being overpaid for prospects in the trade to get somebody offensively. Because again, it's not going to make a bigger difference if the 4 guys up top do the thing. I agree with David Stearns in that aspect. Because if the guys don't do it up the top, it doesn't matter what the lineup does. Mullins can be the best player on this team. It's not going to make a tremendous difference if the 4 guys up top don't do their job. We know this rotation isn't very good. Like, everybody just forgets that? Like, I think that's the biggest problem. Everybody just forgets that. Like, they're not very good. They're not very good. And then you bring in a stronger bullpen because you weren't willing to overpay for at least one top 3 starter. So you used, an 8th prospect or worse to get 3 bullpen arms in here because you have to supplement the garbage in your rotation. So we're going to overuse our bullpen because our rotation is bad. Like, why are we defending this? Why are we acting like it's not a big deal? Like, these bullpen arms are going to be so overused, even with the kids, if they come up. Even if they bring up 2 starting pitches, if they bring up McLean and they bring up Sproat, do you really think these guys are going to consistently throw 6 innings or more? You are out of your mind. These guys are so on restriction mode right now. They've already pitched probably 90 innings to 100 already. They're not pitching 70, 80 more innings, which they might have to do with this rotation that doesn't go deep. Like, you can't push Senga because he can't do it, even though you give him extra rest. Holmes can't get through a 5th inning. Manaea is working his way back, so you can't push him and ultimately hurt him. David Peterson is the Lone Ranger in this rotation. Frankie Montas is garbage. Like, here's the problem. That is the problem. This has been the problem the whole year. People wanted to poo-poo it and talk about the offense when you can't do nothing about the offense except hoping those top of the 4 guys get going. We talk about the lineup like we can fix it with somebody else. We can't. The guys that are supposed to do the job are already there. So it's stupid and a waste of time to talk about the lineup that we know hasn't been productive enough. We know that. But we all know those 4 guys at the top are going to make or break the lineup. So bringing in anybody at the trade deadline wasn't going to make a difference if those guys are not going to hit. Ultimately, if that ends up being the problem where we don't hit in the playoffs and we ultimately lose, we can blame the offense till the cows come home. But those guys have a track record in the playoffs. They have a track record with the back of their baseball cards. So we can't do anything about the offense. We could have done something with the rotation. We did it with the bullpen. Why not strengthen the overall pitching staff instead of half-assing the deadline with a center fielder to shut up fans and 3 bullpen arms to quiet the fan base? Because too many people were way too excited. And I gave him a B+ because of the fact that I wasn't even expecting that much from David Stearns, what he did. So I was pleasantly surprised he actually was aggressive in that aspect. But ultimately, the biggest problem that has haunted this team the whole year and why many bullpen arms got hurt and why many bullpen arms ended up being terrible since June was because the starting pitching was continuing to just not go deeper into games. Right? How many people in this chat have said pitch and win championships? I don't ultimately agree, like 100%, but you can't have guys, like, you can shorten your bullpen all you want in the playoffs. And that ultimately might help the Mets. But, like, there is nobody that I trust, even David Peterson for that matter. Right? I like him, and it's probably the only guy I trust in this rotation. But we're really talking about David Peterson pitching in Game 7? Because I don't even know if we can trust Manaea yet. We have no idea if he can stay healthy and pitch well for the rest of the season. So let's not count Manaea in like he's just an automatic and going to be ready. Like, that's where we're putting our trust in David Peterson. Where 2 years ago, 99% of Met fans did not want this guy in the rotation at all. You see how fast things change, right? So the ultimate problem with the starting rotation that I called from day one, and I got killed in April and May, completely killed. And my guy Chris was one of the guys that said, "Hey, Rob, you gonna give him a little credit?" Yeah, I did. But he would even admit that I said this from day one. Mike, he hasn't started, but he pitched in like long relief because some guys couldn't go deep. But he pitched really well when he did. But it's not about David Peterson. Did he pitch in the postseason? It's if he does, I trust him keeping the team in the ball game. But there is nobody else in this rotation that I can say that for. So, like, I just like I ultimately feel more confident that this offense will come up big postseason time. Now, I'm not going to tell you they're going to figure it out in August and September, but there's too many guys that we just spoke about that have good numbers in the postseason and that are clutch. And I don't see why they wouldn't do it again this year, that they've done it most of their career when they got into the playoffs. So, like, we talk about Kodai Senga like this guy is just going to, has been pitching in the postseason all his life. And when he did, he pitched bad. And that was last year. And he was just coming back from injury, which, again, was another stupid idea from the Mets, deciding to do that. But when your best pitcher ended up being Jose Quintana in the postseason and throughout your postseason, who had your best overall starts in all the starts he made in the postseason, that should have rang a bell. That should have alerted Met fans and David Stearns, but it didn't, because we ultimately just, jumped on the bandwagon and just overhyped what Manaea did and made him out to be what he, overhyped what he did, and then ultimately called him an ace. And then Luis Severino went to Oakland or Sacramento Athletics, whatever you want to call it. So, like, Stearns is so focused on getting Manaea here on a little bit of a discount, because ultimately, if somebody would have if Manaea wasn't a guy who actually liked it here, or was just so enamored about what the Mets did here and the relationships he had, he would have never took a discount, because most guys don't. He would have been somewhere else. And then Met fans would have been like, well, we got Kodai Senga coming back, the ace. That's what you would have said, because they already said it. So Sean Manaea, even if he's not going to be what he was last year. I truly believe that. If he is great, that helps. But ultimately, I think he's going to be a little bit worse than last year. And ultimately, that's not going to be good enough. Even with as great as he was last year, it still wasn't good enough. And I think the rotation last year was a lot more stable than it was this year. Because guess who pitched every day, every fifth day? Luis Severino, Sean Manaea at the top of your rotation. Then when they started to pitch better, they were still giving you innings. We don't have that at the top. We got David Peterson. So, Rob, at what point do we enter Panic City? I don't think you have to panic, because I think we will make the playoffs, and the ultimate goal should be making the playoffs, right? We want to win divisions. Understandable, right? It's nice to have that little flag blowing in the wind. I know that's cute and all, but ultimately it doesn't freaking matter, right? I would like to avoid the wild card round, so I would like to have one of the two best records in the National League, so we can have that break, because ultimately it's gonna, the Mets are gonna they're probably praying right now for a bye, because then they can give Kodai Senga 14 days off, and he can pitch 4 innings for them, that's the problem. This team so badly needs a bye to help their rotation in whatever manner they're trying to help this rotation, because even the rest is not doing anything for this rotation. The rest was ultimately supposed to get these guys deeper into games and have them on the mound with more rest so they can pitch better and ultimately give length. They've done none of that. MDOT, we don't need the division. Did we need the division last year? Ultimately, the Phillies didn't pass us in the playoffs. The Braves ultimately lost, right? And ultimately, we didn't have a division. The division is fine. And I want to win a division, but it's no point winning a division if you're the third best division team. You're playing the wild card round. You're just as fucked as the wild card teams. That's what we're doing here. So, I just feel like Emda, you do understand you win a division, it doesn't automatically grant you out of the wild card. If you're the third best team division, third best team record in the National League in the division, you're playing a wild card round. You're playing the number 3 wild card team. And what is that? Isn't that the Padres right now? Great, the team that we can't beat. we have to be one of the two best teams in the National League. So, and we're right there. It's not like we're like 7 games back of these teams. Again, we're all within a 2-game radius of being the best record in the National League. Like, it's not that crazy. Like, it's doable. But ultimately, I think this team needs that bye because of the rotation. And because I truly believe they're going to overuse this bullpen that is supposed to be very nasty. I mean, you revamp this bullpen to the point where all 4 of these guys, and Diaz, Soto, Rogers, and Helsley can all close. So having those guys are going to be important. But are we going to use August and September to overuse these guys because our starters can't go deep? Like, I don't see where anybody's going to go deep into games here. Like, if they're not going to move Holmes into the bullpen, he's just going to consistently throw 4 or 5 innings. And we don't even know if it's going to be good innings. Kodai Senga, occasionally will throw you 6 innings there, but it's like, oh, I told you so. And then he'll go back to his 4 innings again for 3 starts. Sean Manaea is still building up. And again, the broadcast just said at the end of the game, and Ron Donlan brought it up because it's obviously a problem. Are they going to push Sean Manaea tomorrow? And then, what was it? Keith said, or Gary said, I hope. Oh, no. Gary said, oh, is Manaea going to get pushed? And then Ron Donlan was like, I hope so. Because you don't have a choice. So now we're going to push Manaea, who shouldn't be pushed right now because nobody else is doing the job. So we're going to push Manaea into probably the 95 pitch range where you might want to try to take him out in the 90 pitch count the way they're set, the way they've been planning this. Because what was his last stop? 84 pitches. So you would think they would try to take him out at 90 pitches, but they might not even be able to afford to do that because of that. It's not about, oh, we got a bullpen now, use them. It's about, let's not stop using our bullpen and just continue to use 5 guys every night. Because didn't we see that story April and May? Taking guys out, even though they were pitching well, taking guys out. 5th inning, 4th inning, 90 pitches, take him out, regardless if he's pitching well or not. And ultimately, it destroyed our bullpen in April and May. Then June came around when our starters got hurt and nobody pitched well. Our bullpen had to be even used even more, and they were done. So we're causing the same problem with different players in the bullpen. Just because they're very good, it really means nothing if you're going to overuse them. Because, oh, great, they're going to get us through August and September. We might win a division here. We might even be a bye. And what's it going to matter in the playoffs? And Dolo? And do you remember when the Mets came, when Manaea came back after his first start, or right before his first start, right before the All-Star break or his game, and the broadcast said, the Mets are not worried about his oblique. They're worried about the elbow. Who brings that up when it is an oblique problem? Now, he had to take a step back a little bit because he had a loose body in his elbow. But that loose body, they weren't even talking about it like that. They were talking about it with like constructural, like the structure of the elbow. Like, is that what you're worried about? And why wouldn't they be? He changed his complete mechanics around where he's never thrown that in his career. And I've said that last year, that I would not be shocked if, again, go through the offseason, guys, before Sean Manaea got hurt. I kept on saying it. I don't trust that mechanical change. It helped him, but ultimately your body's going to catch up to you. And it did. It took him away from more than half the season, or almost a half the season. Like it's crazy. Oh, but Dolo, don't worry if Manaea gets Tommy John surgery. It's a short-term deal because that's all they care about. They care about, well, the risk of giving a long-term deal is going to be a problem when they get injured. But the short-term deals are just as bad because they get injured too. Because you paid Sean Manaea money-wise like a co-ace, basically. But you gave him a short-term deal because he was willing to take it. And you weren't willing to give 5, 6, 7-year deals to other guys. And yes, some guys got hurt. Some guys are not pitching as well. Understandable. But David Stearns and some Met fans act like short-term deals aren't just as a risk injury-wise as long-term deals. They are. Ultimately, both of the short-term and long-term pitchers are going to come back. Who are you going to trust more? The guy who's actually has been good here, really good, or the guy that has been subpar and somewhat good? I'd rather have the guy coming back from Tommy John that I know pitches well. Like, I just don't understand that concept. Like, it's a stupid mindset. Oh, you can't pay pitching. It's too risky. So a short-term deal is not risky? If Shomanaya gets hurt now, doesn't that affect the 2025 season just as much as Corbin Burns getting hurt and affecting the 2025 season? But here's what I do know. When Corbin Burns comes back from Tommy John, he'll probably pitch just as good. Shomanaya coming off of oblique and changing his mechanics, coming back from Tommy John. Do we expect him to pitch that well? Can his arm even throw in that same angle after Tommy John? Oh. Amazing how you break it down and it doesn't sound as nice. But hey, ultimately, you didn't pay him a lot of money or a lot of years, so ultimately it's okay. Even though it still screws you in the present. Because Tommy John doesn't affect year 6 or 7. It affects that year and some of the following year. Like the brainwash that baseball has done to fan bases is for baseball fans is crazy. I talked about this in the pregame. The same issue. They brainwash fans to thinking that long-term deals, high-risk pitchers are not worth long-term deals because of risk of injury. No other reason. They made you believe that short-term deals are better because of the possibility of injuries. Yet, all you really care about those better pitchers, because ultimately the longer-term deals are better pitchers. You get short-term deals, the short-term deals are usually not as good as those pitchers. So you're going into getting pitchers that are not as good. The only reason why you're giving them short-term deals is because they're accepting it because they're not as good. Same concept. You're getting worse pitchers to save you financially for what? Ultimately, if these guys get hurt, it's the same nonsense. It's just you have less years with them, but ultimately you're hurting yourself in the early part of those contracts anyway, regardless. But guess what? If that long-term deal actually stays healthy for the majority, or at least more than half of the long-term deal, you're better off. Yeah, but you know what, Mike? Alcantara actually has pitched. Not as good, but he's pitched. You know, Alcantara has pitched more times in the 6th inning than the majority of this Mets rotation, coming off of Tommy John surgery. Who's had Tommy John surgery here? Holmes was a bullpen guy. Kodai Senga was mostly legs. And Shomanaya had an oblique. And Montas just came back from injury not too long ago. So they haven't pitched as great, but they go out there and pitch. So we're deathly afraid because they brainwashed you. That's the ultimate reason. I said this in a pregame when brainwashing you when it comes to analytics and why starters get hurt and all that other nonsense. Like short-term deal pitchers are immune to getting hurt, when ultimately it affects your team the same in that year. So there's no difference. It's just a financial risk. They want you to believe it's a baseball risk. It's not. It's a financial risk. That's it. They brainwash fans into thinking it's a baseball risk. It's not. Because if a short-term deal guy has Tommy John surgery, at least the guy with the short-term deal has less time with that team. And if he does remain healthy, pretty good chance that team's not going to re-sign him. But at least that long-term guy He comes back with Tommy John. He pitches. And you know you have him. You don't have to worry about spending more money because ultimately these short-term deals are going to add up, aren't they? You know, a couple of 15, 17, $20 million guys are going to add up probably to the same amount of that one pitcher that's really damn good that you had to spend $200 million on. Ultimately, it's going to cost the same amount over the years. So what are you really saving? Because it looks bigger on paper, it ultimately costs you the same thing in the same amount of years. Because if you're constantly rotating and giving guys 3-year deals, 2-year deals, and $18 million here, $50 million there, it's going to add up to the same amount. It's quantity over quality. And they brainwash people to thinking that's better. It's not. It never was. There's a reason why over 89, 90 years of baseball, that starting pitchers were getting paid what they deserve because they always went longer into games. They've pitched better. And ultimately, bullpen arms are failed starters. But again, the financial situation in baseball is why analytics became a big part of it, because ultimately it proved in little parts of the analytics that, hey, quantity in the bullpen is cheaper than quality of the rotation, because quality of the rotation costs you more. And quality of the bullpen never costs you more, except for a closer. And 9 out of 10 times, they don't even pay him that. So they brainwashed everybody into thinking quantity is better than quality. And they throw all these analytical stats saying, well, look at this guy and look at this guy. One guy's getting paid $25 million. This guy's getting $18 million. So it's a $7 million difference. And then they'll throw 3 analytical stats at you that are similar. Yet ultimately, all that everybody should care about is, does he give you innings and does he win ball games? Like they don't throw those stats at you. No. God forbid. Let's throw whip. Let's throw this nonsense analytical stat. They do that to act like that pitcher that's a shorter term deal is just as good as the guy that got the long term deal. But we know it's not true. But a lot of people believe it because they brainwash you into believing that. Because they're going to make you find a stat that says this guy is just as good as this guy, but you just saved $8 million and maybe a couple more years on a contract per year. Ultimately, we know who's going to be the best pitcher throughout that. Let's just pick let's say Shomania and Max Fried. Over the next 3 years, who do you think is going to pitch better? Probably Max Fried, right? Ultimately, they might both get hurt. But if Max Fried pitches well and it's still an ace, while Shomania is already off the team and you got to pay somebody else another $17 million to fill that spot, that adds up too, which they don't mention because they don't want you to realize that, which is just obvious. And it's silly because it's the same amazing process that they throw at you. And they did it around baseball. I swear to you guys, I truly believe that these owners in these owners meeting for years have been trying to find ways to lower the starting pitching payroll, like salaries of these pitchers. Ultimately, right, they would pitch them till their life came home if they were on a rental contract or they were on, last year of their deal. They would throw you to death because they know they weren't going to sign you. The Milwaukee Brewers did it to CC Sabathia. They threw him every inning possible. They didn't give a damn because ultimately they did not know. They knew they weren't going to sign him. Let somebody else have the used goods. And ultimately, what happened? He got that big contract from the Yankees. They got a World Series out of it. And the Brewers were holding their hands, still losing games in the playoffs. And oh, by the way, look at that. It's amazing how that works, right? So David Stearns wants to overuse all these guys because he's not going to sign most of these guys. And if they do have good years, they're going to opt out for more money. And David Stearns ultimately going to get somebody else for lesser money who is not as good. or who didn't have as good as a season. It's a revolving door of shit. It's coming downhill. You just wipe it away and more comes down. That's what David Stearns does with pitching. Ultimately, last time I checked, the Brewers don't have a World Series championship while he ran that team. And you could talk about, consistency in the playoffs, but if you continue to lose in the playoffs, nobody's going to be happy. Like, when David Stearns talks about sustained success and making the playoffs, with sustained success, what does that really mean? That he's telling you, you guys should be happy making the playoffs, 7 out of 8 years when you never did that in the history. Yeah, but at some point, people are going to say, well, you're not winning the World Series. Isn't that the ultimate goal? Well, Squints, I agree with you. I think all these guys are overpaid. But it is what it is. That's the way the cookie has crumbled around sports in general. But that's the issue, guys. And Mike, I'm not even saying they don't care about winning. They ultimately care about the wrong things too much. And then when you constantly see teams go big at the deadline and win World Series and make the big move and sign the big pitcher, ultimately those guys actually probably win more often than not. I don't see the half-assed rotations and having no ace and trying to revamp a bullpen because you didn't do your job in the offseason ultimately pans out. Radiant, you can call it the young pitchers all you want. They're gonna be on restrictions. So you're gonna have another 4 or 5 inning pitcher, regardless if they pitch well or not, or coming out in that inning. They're probably going to throw 85 pitches at most. They're going to throw 4 or 5 innings, and you still got to use 3 to 4 guys every single night out of your bullpen. It doesn't solve the issue. It's the same thing. It's just another name that you get excited about to shut you up. And that's what David Stearns did. He couldn't wait to get on 6:30, a half hour after the deadline, to talk about his moves and what ultimately they might do without acquiring a pitcher at the deadline. He couldn't wait to get on. There was no GM around baseball that got on at 6:30 right after the deadline. Everybody else was either later that night or the next day. This was so meticulously planned by David Stearns because he ultimately knew if he didn't get that starter, which I truly believe he didn't think he was ever going to get. Because 3 weeks ago, we all heard that the Mets were running on Mitch Keller. And it just never, I had Noah Hiles on from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. And he says, yeah, the Mets are talking with them. He goes, I don't think it's a strong possibility, but they're definitely talking. So where did that go? Ultimately, they didn't trade him, and a lot of starters didn't get traded. But at some point, you got to bite the bullet and overpay a little bit. We better not be talking about the starter is going to be the problem in the playoffs because you ultimately failed that team. And these guys in the minors and these prospect pitchers already have thrown, 90 to 100 innings right now? Do you really think they're going to make them throw another 50, 60, 70 innings into the playoffs, August, September, and a month into the playoffs? Come on. They don't do that. Why do you think they're not up yet? And that's the other problem I have. They should be up. They should have been up on July 31st at 6:30 after you didn't make a starting pitching trade. But why do you think they're not bringing them up yet? Because they're trying to limit the innings as much as possible. If they're going to start in the minors for another start, they're not going to throw a lot. They're going to protect it because they're probably going to need them in this rotation, at least one of them. So they're trying to limit the innings already in the minors. So when they get up here, they're going to limit the innings in the majors. And then no matter what they do during their starts, they can be pitching no-hitters. They can be throwing great in the first 4 or 5 innings, and they're going to get taken out. And then people are going to get annoyed. And then I'm going to tell you, I told you so. Unless there is no restrictions on these guys and you're going to let them throw, which I find it very hard to believe. I will say I was wrong. But I think I'm kind of convincing a lot of people that it's probably going to happen. Those restrictions are going to continue into the majors. So like I get frustrated at the fact that, Stearns is using his little, sarcasm and his smirk to convince you that, well, we got our minor league guys. You know why? Because Met fans have been talking about it the whole season. And he got you right where he wanted. He got you right in the hands. He squeezed you because he knew you've been talking about it the whole season. In June, we were talking about it when we needed pitching. Didn't bring them up then for whatever reason. But you were dangling. Hey, what about Sprout? What about McLean? Tong? Oh, a couple of months. And then he says the words that everybody wanted to hear. Oh, we're going to use our prospects, our pitching guys, most likely in the minors, at least one of them. And hinted at it. Didn't really say it outright, but hinted at it. And it got everybody excited. Because he knows nobody's going to talk about pitch limit or pitch count or innings limit. And then when they come up here and they do the pitch count and they do the innings limit on these guys, everybody's like, what are you doing that for? Because that's what they do. They fooled you again. They brainwashed you into believing that this was going to be the savior. And knowing that you were talking about it the whole season and definitely in June. And if he didn't make that starting pitching move, which I truly believe that he wasn't necessarily all in on starting pitching, because clearly he wasn't, and knew he had that in his back pocket to tell you right after the deadline. Again, the cameras were rolling. Half hour after the deadline. Like, haha, I fooled you. But guess what? We got our pitchers in our farm system that everybody wants to see, and they're pitching really good. But nobody's telling you that they're not going to throw more than 130 innings this year, either of them. So where are they at right now? Let's bring out the stats, right? Noah McLean. All right, here we go. I love this stuff. All right, Noah McLean, obviously, AAA. He's this is even worse. He's thrown 104 innings already, guys. There's a month left of the minor league season. So what is he going to get? 3 more starts? So on average, let's say he throws 5 innings. Another 20 innings, let's say 15, 20 innings. So he's gonna be at the 130 mark if he pitches the rest of the minor league season. That goes the same for probably Sprout. You really think they're going to make him throw another 30 to 40 innings? Another month of games into the playoffs? If he still's up here and pitches well? You're going to consistently get 5 inning, 4 inning starts and pitch count and all these restrictions. Like, geez. Yeah, Dolo. And they didn't even though Tidwell wasn't one of their favorites, they were still limited him in his outings. Like, hey, let's just go to Ben and Sprout really quick. 104 innings for Noah McLean, and there's a month left of the regular of the season for the minors. So about 3 or 4 more starts, give or take. So another about 20 innings or so. If they only let him go 5 innings. Like here we go. Jesus Christ. So Brandon Sproat has thrown 95 innings. So that means he probably thrown 1 less start than Noah McLean. I think 1 less more. He already has 21 innings, 95 innings. So his next start, which hopefully it's in the majors, he's about 25 innings away on his limit, because if he pitched a full minor league season, it's done at the end of the month. So they're going to get around 4 more starts, give or take. And obviously in the postseason in the minors, but even they limit them there anyway. So let's say another 30 innings from both of them. 30 innings doesn't even get us through September for these 2 guys. And bringing them up, ultimately you need help in the rotation, not just in quality starts, but length. You're not getting that from them. Like, here we go. So now maybe I burst your bubble and I got people upset because you got a little excited about when Stern said that about the starting pitchers in our farm system. And that's only if you get 2 of those guys up here. I don't think they're going to do 2 of them. I think they're going to give one guy a shot. That guy don't work. They're going to give the other guy a shot. So you got 2 months of trying these guys out while they're still building up innings in the minors. So it's even worse. Like, I just, like, I don't want to be negative. I really don't. But it's so obvious to what I'm saying. Like, if I haven't convinced you, you're going to get very convinced when they actually do what I told you they're going to do. Because they're not messing with these arms. They're not over pitching these guys. Like, are they going to piggyback Holmes and Sproat in a start? Which sounds nice, but ultimately you're going to need another starter for the next day if you're going to piggyback these guys. It sounds good in reality or in retrospect and of a plan, but the next day, who was supposed to be starting are pitching the same day. You can piggyback these guys to save innings, but what does that do? You still need another pitcher the next day. Like, they're in a real pickle right now. And I don't know how they're going to get out of it. Because I don't really give a damn if Sproat and McLean pitch well. They're not pitching more than 5 innings. They're not going to throw more than 90 pitches probably. So what are we gaining here? A chance to win a ball game in the next 3 innings, 4 innings of games, which we have been dealing with anyway throughout the entire season. Squints, it's not just the offense. I talked about the offense being a problem, but we can't change the offense. Even during the deadline, we couldn't change superstar all-star bats to bring to this team. We have that. They're not producing. We know that. But we know we couldn't fix the lineup at the deadline. We knew we can get improvement in an area that was just a 0 in Mullins, but we know Mullins wasn't going to be the difference maker in the lineup. It was still going to rely on those 4 guys at the top. So you couldn't change that at the deadline. The reason why I'm pissed off is because you had the opportunity to change the rotation. You could have got an impact arm in this rotation. You didn't do it. Why? Because you didn't want to overpay. But what did I talk about? You got to be uncomfortable. The Padres were very uncomfortable in their trade deadline. Very uncomfortable. At some point, you have to be uncomfortable. You're a top 5 team in the league, right? There is nobody better than 3 games than you. So you're one of the best teams in baseball. If you're not going to do it now, when are you going to do it? Because there's a pretty good chance those 7 top prospects you didn't trade, you'll be lucky if 3 of them actually turn out decent. So I don't want to hear that. There was a chance to get arms at the deadline. Now, ultimately, not a lot of teams overpaid. But why did the Mets have to fall in line with the other teams? That is the difference between going for it and realizing that, okay, well, we have what we have. Like, it's just silly. Like, that overpay might be the difference of what can happen down the road this year. And you didn't want to overpay. And just because everybody else didn't overpay, Met fans act like it was okay. Like, so we fell in line with everybody else who didn't overpay. How does that make sense? That doesn't make sense. So you did a good job of areas of need in certain areas. The bullpen needed to get revamped. That was obvious. If he didn't do that, it's a disaster. So something that he did for the bullpen was an obvious get. He needed multiple arms. He got solid arms, really good arms. So he did that. He filled the hole in center field with better production offensively than Tyrone Taylor. Not a game changer. We understand that because we all know that lineup is revolving around the top 4 guys in the lineup. But Kev, I've said that. That's the problem. He could have just spent money to get a starter so he didn't have to worry about paying prospects at the deadline. That's what I'm trying to say. He's not spending money on starting pitching. Go back to my other shows during the trade deadline shows. I said this. You're not paying top starting pitching during the offseason and free agency, and you're not willing to trade top prospects for a top line starter. So how are you going to get them? Hope doesn't happen in baseball very often. It doesn't work all the time. You're hoping that McLean, Tong, or Sproat become an ace. And pretty good chance none of them will. And you're hoping one of them do. But hope doesn't really help you in 2025. It might help you next year. If these guys were so highly regarded, why weren't at least one of them up here in June when we had no starting pitching because of injuries? I'll tell you why. Because they're so concerned about bringing them up so early that they didn't want to overuse them innings-wise. Because when you come to the majors, you can't protect these guys all year. We're protecting Kodai Senga like he's a fucking rookie. Tell Kodai Senga to grow a pair. Go out there every fifth day and be a fucking man. Stop being a baby saying you need everything to go right and need 7 days off just to pitch on the mound to give us 4 fucking innings. It's embarrassing. But hey, we didn't spend money on Yamamoto. Yet, he pitched pretty well in the playoffs, didn't he? I don't even expect Kodai Senga to pitch well in the postseason. God knows if he can even get there. The brainwash from David Stearns is so underestimated. Oh, Kev, I don't even think it's about service time. I just think if you brought him up in June, David Stearns was deathly afraid of them pitching well, that he had to keep him up. You can't send them down if they pitch well, even if these guys come back from injury. He was deathly afraid of these guys pitching well in June, that he had no choice but to put them up, keep them up, because they were pitching well, and they might have been winning games in June. We might have close to 70 wins by now. We might be one of the best team in baseball record-wise. But he was so deathly afraid of those guys pitching well that he would have no choice but to keep them up, which means they would throw a lot more innings than what they currently are, and where they could control their innings greatly in the minors. You can't greatly control those innings at the majors when you desperately need pitching. That's the problem. It's just, yeah, Kag, I agree. We are not doing everything to win. And that's the frustrating part. This MLB is so wide open that there's no dominant team. And yet we're playing this game like, well, it's okay. Nobody else overpaid for starting pitching, so why should we? And then ultimately, you're fucked just like the other teams and relying on hope just like the other teams and hoping things work out. Because I see other teams bring up their pitching prospects and throw them innings. Look at the Brewers. I know he got hurt, but they were throwing him innings. Like, what are we afraid of? These kids are probably going to get hurt anyway, as much as you protect them. So use them. It's just amazing to me that you don't want to spend money on starting pitching, top line starters, because of long-term deals. You're deathly afraid of that. And then you're not willing to do it at the deadline that everybody told me he was going to do. All I heard all year. Oh, he's going to get a starting pitcher. He's going to do what he has to do at the deadline. And then he ultimately doesn't overpay for a starting pitcher, which people are going to say, well, I didn't want him to overpay for a pitcher. Well, he brainwashed you too, because he hammered that into your head all year, into the offseason, into the season, that it's not worth getting top-line starters for top-line money and long-term years, long-term deals. And ultimately, the team that's going to win the World Series, I guarantee you, has a long-term deal pitcher that's an ace. And they're going to be the ones on top. And then I say, I told you so. And I laugh, ha, ha, ha. And I'm going to be ultimately pissed off that I'm laughing. because teams that use this model don't win World Series because they don't have an ace. They don't have top line starters. Even Peterson has been really good. Still don't trust him enough to be a top line starter. So what are we doing here? Can you name guys in the rotation for the last 5 World Series champions? I bet you can. Because they're top starters. They get paid a lot of money in a lot of years. And we're afraid to say it. Like David Stearns is going to slap us on the wrist or something. He made you believe it's not worth it. And then you have Met fans saying it. Yet they're the same Met fans that saying pitchers win championships, but they're the same ones that say, well, I'm not paying a long-term deal to this guy. David Stearns right. Yeah. He made you believe it. Again, you can't have it both ways. You can't prospect hug and not spend money on better pitching. You have to do either one, or you're going to end up with the shit we're dealing with right now. Because you have to rely on your offense every game because your pitching sucks. And I understand you have to we were relying on this offense from day one to be very good. But they don't just have to be very good, they have to be great because your pitchers are getting 5-6 runs a game. Like that's not sustainable either. And I don't know, guys. I've been saying the same nonsense, and it came to fruition during this last month, up until this trade deadline. Like we all talked about pitching. Like people keep on talking about pitching that it wins championships, and then, oh, I don't want to trade this guy. I don't want to trade that guy. I don't want to overpay for pitching. Well, you also said that you didn't want to overpay for pitching, so you can't do both and act like you're going to get who you need. Doesn't work. There's a slim chance of hope that the Mets can find a way to win a World Series with this garbage at the rotation. Very slim hope. Because they're ultimately going to be a team you face that has better starting pitching. And the same people, Met fans, that bitch about pitching wins championships are the same ones that prospect hugs and the same ones that didn't want to give long-term deals to top pitchers. So you fall for your own idiotic ideas where you don't want to do one, but you also said you didn't want to do the other and then claim pitchers win championships. But you don't want to do either or to get that. There's a very good chance, and there's more of a chance of a team that has top starter, at least one. Some of them have top 2 starters, that they're ultimately going to win the championship. And when the Mets get beat by a team that has better pitching, I'm be like, well, David Stearns says long-term deals don't work, and he don't like doing it. And then he's also telling you, with this trade deadline, he will not overpay for starting pitching that is better than we currently have. Because he said, I don't mind trading prospects if I know it's ultimately better than what we currently have. Those were guys on the market. You didn't want to overpay, but you just lied and said you were willing to get guys that were better than what you currently have. There was a ton of guys that were better than what you currently have. You didn't want to pay. That's on you. You don't want to spend money on top-line starters. You don't want to trade top prospects for top-line starters. You're between a rock and a hard place, and you want people to believe that it's successful. David Stearns, you're a loser. Plain and simple. You ran a team like the Brewers that we all know you didn't have money, but you also didn't get very far into the playoffs more often than not, because ultimately you didn't actually get what you needed at deadlines or spend money because you didn't have it. Fine. But you weren't willing to give up your top prospects for hitting that you ultimately needed in the playoffs because you had pitching. You had Woodruff, you had Burns. So your rotation was fine. You ultimately got bullpen arms at deadlines, but you ended up hitting like shit most of your years in the postseason. Go look at the offensive stats for the Brewers when David Stearns ran that team. Their pitching was very good. So that pitching win championships goes out the window when you don't hit. So their offense wasn't very good in the postseason in most of his years. He wasn't willing to trade the prospects to get better hitting because ultimately that's all he had in his organization because he didn't have the money. What is the excuse now? You have both. Yeah, but Red Bear, it's not, again, we continue to talk about the offense where we couldn't get better offensively because there's nobody better than what we have on our roster. Who's better than Lindor out there? Who's better than Soto, Alonso, Nimmo that we were going to get with a bat? Josh Naylor? Right? Who are you going to get? Yastrzemski from the Giants? You wanted to get Eugenio Suarez? Why not? Nobody at third plays well. But they weren't paying for a rental. That was a position player because you have 17 third basemen, which is also Stearns' fault. Mostly Vientos because he lost his job. So you had nobody there at third base that plays well. So you could have got Eugenio Suarez. You didn't really give up much for him. It wasn't a big offer. Even the Diamondbacks said that teams weren't willing to overpay for Eugenio Suarez. So the Mets could have got him, but they told you they have third basemen, that they believed in these guys. So now you're stuck with guys that have half-assed it and not played well, and now you're stuck with them because you have nowhere else to go. And you're hoping they play well. So the hope is real. But hey, Vientos, he's got an 11-game hitting streak, but ultimately, what has he really done for winning these games? Not much. You know why? Because the top four guys matter more than those guys. So we weren't able to get – but Robert, I agree with you that the offense hasn't been good. But we ultimately couldn't fix that to the highest level at the deadline. We could have fixed that at the highest level with starting pitching. He just didn't want to overpay prospect-wise, which some might say, well, I don't want to. Okay, fine. But a lot of you also said you didn't want to pay for long-term deals for starters. You can't have it both ways. It doesn't work. So fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me, right? So there you go. There's your problem. He had an opportunity to get better pitchers in here. He said a few days before the deadline, yeah, I'm willing to give up top prospects, our higher ranked prospects, for starting pitching that is ultimately better than what we have. They were out there. You didn't want to overpay. So you basically sold us a bill of goods before the deadline because a lot of people said, oh, he said he would. So what were we talking about this entire trade deadline period? Oh, he's going for a starter. He's willing to trade prospects for a guy that's better than what we currently have. They were out there. You didn't do it because you lied and said you were willing to give up top prospects for guys that were better than what you currently have. You sold us a bill of goods. You said one thing and did the exact opposite. Because he didn't give anything of significance for these prospects. He gave a lot of quantity, but not a lot of quality for these guys. But it's okay. We're running Frankie Montas out there. He was talking about Paul Blackburn after the deadline, which I don't know why a reporter didn't slap him in the face. Oh, wait, it was on a Zoom call. Oops. Like this is what we're talking about. And then he brought up the prospect pitchers because it knows they would excite the fan base a little bit. But I dampened that mood a little bit because I find it very hard to believe there's going to be no restrictions on those guys. I just gave you the stats. McLean threw 104 pitches already, 104 innings already. And there's 1 month left in the minors for regular season. So he's going to pitch about 4 more games in the regular season where they can control his innings. Same thing with Sprody, has 95 innings. They're going to control his starts for the last month of the season. And if they bring them up, They already know they have an innings limit for them. So what do you think they're going to do? They're going to throw 4 innings, maybe 5 occasionally, and you hope they pitch well with that. But no matter how good they pitch, they're coming out of the game as early as possible. And now, if they pitch well, you can't send them down because they're helping you win, hopefully. And they might help you go into the playoffs and pitch well. So now you're in a rock and a hard place with Matt Harvey all over again. Yeah, committee, I don't care about these prospect pitchers. I don't. We need strong, fresh arms that have innings limit. Can't wait. 100% Dolo. Great pitching doesn't throw up a 7 spot often. They might have a bad start out of 4 starts, let's say a bad start in a month, but their other 3 are damn good. This is the problem. We're consistently having bad starts where we're only blaming the offense because that's the easiest thing to blame. Yet, there was nothing we could have done at the deadline to ultimately get guys that we currently have on top 4 that's better, or at least similar. You could have talked about Eugenio Suarez, but if he's the only one hitting and nobody else is in the top 4, we're still losing. Like, we understand. No, Red Bear, it's not about having 4 or 5 great pitches. You're completely not understanding me. I was asking for 1 top line starter, 1 in the offseason, or again, Manaea is a solid number 2, 3. If you would have brought that top starter in, now we're talking about guys 3, 4, 5, where we can work with that. We can work with Kodai Senga being our 3rd starter. We can work with David Peterson being our 3rd starter. And Montas being our 5th starter. Clay Helms being our 4th starter. But we don't have that. Manaea, we don't know what he's going to be for the rest of the year. Again, Red, I understand that. I told you about the offense. The offense is a problem. But stop neglecting that the pitching has been good. Because at any given day, the offense can score 12 runs. There is no day other than David Peterson where you're going to get 6 innings or more and a really good start from our pitchers. It's so rare. Jose, I think Juan Soto, I think you can rate it at like a 2. And that one really good month was the Mets' worst month because nobody else hit. So the offense is a problem. I agree with you. But ultimately, we're hoping for our offense to give us, 5 runs a game, 6 runs a game, because our pitching gives up that much every game? If it's not David Peterson? Like, that's where we are. The offense is a problem. But pitching was also a problem. Starting pitching was a problem the whole season. That was available. I understand that, but don't you want better pitching to try to counteract that? Wait a second. Hold on, guys. Was the offense good in April and May? No. What helped us? The starting pitching that was very fresh to start the season. But then they ultimately got tired, right? So here we go. The Mets won not because of their offense in April and May, not because they were 20 games over 500 or close to it by the end of May. It was because of their starting pitching that pitched well because they were fresh coming off of an off season. So ultimately, pitching helps you win, right? So that's the idea. That's the problem. So the pitching did help you win a lot more than the offense this year. So if the offense is not making you win games, then how are we winning games in April and May? It was obviously the pitching. So when the pitching was fresh and good, we were winning. when we had a below 2 ERA on our pitching staff in our rotation. But ultimately, they started to get tired. And then the bullpen that was actually pitching well was overused during those 2 months. And when you needed them, when the pitching was bad, they couldn't do anything. So are we losing because of the offense, or are we losing because the pitching is not as good as it was? Yeah, well, here's the other thing, right? The Dodgers are scoring just over 5 runs per game, and they're not playing well. Why do you think that is? You think it's the offense, or you think it's the pitching? Now, nobody's telling you that the offense doesn't need to step it up. But do you think that the Mets are just going to start scoring runs and we're automatically going to be winning? Do you think that's the case, or do you need some quality good pitching and some length? Like you can't pick up the slack every day offensively. It's not sustainable. I don't care how good your offense is. Like we have to understand that the reason why we were so good in the first 2 months of the season was because the starting pitching was one fresh coming out of the offseason, and they were pitching to the best ERA in baseball in the rotation. And when they started to struggle and some got hurt or some didn't pitch well, the offense couldn't do anything. And it's not like they were, the Mets are easily giving up 5.5 runs per game from June on. Like, no offense is going to make that sustainable to win ball games. You can't average 5.5 runs per game and continue to win. The Dodgers aren't even doing that. Yeah, it was basically April. Even in May, they started to jump up but they were so good in April that they weren't even throwing enough innings to warrant the ERA to go up. That's the crazy thing. Like, their ERA was stagnant for a while in May because they weren't throwing that many innings. And, David Peterson was going a little deep, and even Clay Holmes had a 6-inning start from then. And then it was like, and then they just fell apart in June. And they haven't been very good in July. And it continued. So are the Mets losing? So their 2 best months of the season was because their pitching was excellent. And now in July, their pitching isn't good. Their offense isn't good. And we're losing. So ultimately, isn't the pitching what is making you win? Or no? Because ultimately, if you're giving 5 runs or more a game on average, you got to score 5.5 to 6 runs per game on average. There's not a lot of teams scoring 6 runs a game per average. It's just not, no way. So, and Dola, I agree. I think it was luck. I think it was a guy like Clay Holmes that nobody saw more than 1 inning, maybe 2 a game. So nobody had no idea how many pitches he was going to throw or how he was going to throw his repertoire when he was a 2-pitch pitcher in the bullpen. Now he has 3 pitches. It's a whole different ball game. But guess what? They figured it out. They got the book. Now he's not going deep into games. Now he's not pitching as well. Same thing goes for Kodai Senga. They started to not swing at that ghost fork pitch. But here's the problem. Kodai Senga notoriously has put men on base consistently. Eventually, that dam is going to break and that water is going to get through. And it has happened multiple times this year, a lot of times this year. And now David Peterson's got to get pushed every outing because nobody else can do the job. Then Frankie Montas comes back, has a good start, has a terrible start, has a couple of terrible starts, 6 ERA guy. Well, there you go. So now you can't count on him at all, even with innings. And now Manaea, who you're trying to gradually grow his pitch count, even though that's what the hell rehab's for, but I guess that don't count either. Where they shouldn't have brought him back before the All-Star break. They should have pitched him another outing so he can throw 85 pitches. So when he comes back, he can throw 85 to 90 pitches. You don't have to worry about building anything up because that's how desperately you need pitching. So in his next start, we have no idea if they're going to push him tomorrow. So if they don't push Manaea tomorrow, and maybe he'll get to 85 pitches, maybe they'll throw him 90 pitches. Great. Hopefully he gets through 5, maybe 6. Maybe. That's a big maybe. So that's why I gave it up for Austin Warren in the beginning of the stream. You know why? Because he saved the bullpen today, because God knows what we're going to have to use in this next series against the Guardians, who are actually playing very well, by the way, who are 2 games out of a wild card and are hitting very well. So, and they're actually pitching well too, by the way. So, oh boy, guys. As you know, Mets lost 12-4. They lose the series to the Giants. Upcoming series is the Guardians at home. Manaea is pitching tomorrow. Can't tell you who's pitching game 2 or 3 of that series. Still TBD. Now, I assume, I hope, that one of those guys is Noah McLean or Brandon Sproat. If not, say your prayers. Pray to any God you want to pray to, and hope for the best. Because apparently David Stearns wants hope to get involved in this than rather talent. So with that said, guys, the New York Mets are 63-49. They're at a dead heat with the Philadelphia Phillies in the NL East until, if they win or lose tonight, we can be a half a game up again or a half a game behind them by the end of the day. So hope, pray, and, eat your lucky charms, because that's what David Stearns clearly is using to figure out this starting rotation. His opportunity was the offseason to pay money, or at the deadline to overpay a little bit, probably a little bit more than he wanted to get a starting pitcher in here that is worth anything. So, guys, have they? Because the last time I checked, it was TBD. But before I go, let's see. If Red said it, I'm going to... Oh, God, really? Oh, Lord. So annoying. All right, so let's see. So tomorrow is Manaea. Yes, we know that. And they just did. Okay, so Holmes on Tuesday. And as he said, it is Peterson, which is great, but Peterson in the finale of the series. So it's Manaea, Holmes, and Peterson. So it sounds good on paper with Manaea and Peterson, but I don't know how far they're going to push Manaea, even though the broker said, well, I hope they do. Let's hope they do, because they don't have a choice, because Holmes, they can't push him. I mean, you could try. It ain't going to happen. And Peterson will do what he needs to do, like he always has been. Even when he's not pitching his best, he'll still give you 6 innings. So enjoy, guys. The prospects are not up again. After that, it's going to be 8 games? 49 games? Right? No. 48 games after this series against Guardians with no prospects coming up. Again, they are not bringing them up until I guarantee you, the end of the month. And why? Because they're protecting their innings restrictions. Wonderful. That's why they're not bringing them up yet. Wouldn't it make sense to bring them up? No. They're protecting their innings. Because in the minors, you can manipulate the innings. You can take them out anytime you want. You can't do that at the major league level. You're playing with fire. Nobody cares about winning games in the minor leagues. So if you're going to protect their innings, you could do that in the minors. I'm pretty sure that these guys are not going to come up until at least the end of the month. So they're going to have 2 more starts at least. They're both going to be well over 100 innings. And they're going to sell you a bill of goods and say, here they are, guys. Now you're excited for these guys and to see them. We don't know if they're going to pitch well, but they're going to be on innings restrictions, because if they pitch good at all, they're not going to send them down, because the minor league season mostly going to be over. So you're going to keep one of them up, or maybe 2 of them. And now they're going to extend their innings to what they probably were comfortable with in the organization. And you hope they pitch well, and you hope they can be sustained, because we have no idea. I guarantee you their pitch limit is innings limit is around 130, 135. Because it kind of makes sense with the remainder start for the rest of the season in the minors. So in September, if they do get called up at the end of the month, they'll have about 2 or 3 starts, which will get them to the point of no return. So, guys, hope, pray, and eat your Lucky Charms, because David Stearns is relying on a lot of hope that this can work. And I don't like hope that much. I like actual talent and professional ball players and proven players. But let's see what happens, guys. The pitching rotation is set for the Guardian series. Manaea, Holmes, Peterson. So you're not going to see your minor league prospects, for all you prospect huggers, until maybe the road trip. Who knows? When we start the road trip in Milwaukee. So with that said, guys, have a good night. Mets lose 12-4, lose the series to the Giants. Start it all over again tomorrow against the Guardians at home. Have a good night, guys. Let's go, Mets. And I'll see you tomorrow on the pregame show, guys. Have a good night.
Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life, because the Mets are